Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 46 called Nicole. So guys, on today's episode, I am partnering with Mom Culture, an online lifestyle brand created to spread positive vibes and to highlight both the salty and the sweet sides of parenthood and the road to parenthood. They have this great collection that includes the Rainbow Mama Tea and the Rainbow Babe Tea, created in collaboration with Dr. Jessica Zucker of the hashtag I Had a Miscarriage campaign. These shirts, which are super cute, were created to help raise awareness and connection within the pregnancy and infant loss community. The best part, a portion of proceeds from each one sold goes to continue the work of Dr. Zucker and that hashtag I Had a Miscarriage campaign. So make sure you check them out at www.momculture.com. And if you use the code InfertileAF, you'll get 20% off your entire purchase through February 29th. So again, it's the Rainbow Mama and Rainbow Babe collection at momculture.com. Thanks, Mom Culture. Hi again, guys. So my guest today is Nicole Lawson, an incredible woman who went through years of infertility, including 3 devastating miscarriages, before choosing to go the surrogacy route. And I'm happy to say that today she's got 2 healthy daughters via surrogacy. But that's not all. Nicole was so moved by the surrogacy process that she started her own agency called Abundant Beginnings, based in Los Angeles. Nicole's mom, Pamela Hirsch, is another extraordinary woman who, because of what Nicole went through and the high costs of IVF, surrogacy, and all the other treatments for infertility, created Baby Quest, which is an incredible nonprofit charity that gives grants to people who need help having children because they can't afford the high costs of all these procedures. So you've heard me talk about Baby Quest before on the podcast, in Bridget's episode, in America's episode, and I'm sure some other times too, because Pamela is very entrenched in this community and she does so much good. So her name keeps coming up. And I just want to say that so much good is happening in this family of extraordinary women. I'm proud to know them both. So thank you, Nicole, for sharing your story. Thank you, Pamela, for all that you do. And without further ado, this is Nicole's infertility story. Hi, Nicole. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. I've been really looking forward to talking to you. I know that you're the co-owner of a really successful surrogacy agency called Abundant Beginnings. And the reason, or one of the, the catalyst for starting that was that you had long infertility struggles, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, tell me how it all started for you. When did you know that, there was an issue, and when did you start trying?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you first and foremost for having me speak today.
Of course.
Yeah, so my story, and I'm sure you hear these fertility stories over and over again, and mine is no different than the thousands of women that go through this. And
well, it's so funny, not to interrupt, but they're all so different. I mean, they really are all so different, that which blows me away every time. So I'm sure there's some variables that you're going to talk about that, are new to this podcast. So
yeah, and it's so heartbreaking that we all have to go through this. And now being on the other side and having my 2 girls, of course, it is easier for me to talk about this.
Totally.
And I haven't, you start thinking back to, okay, well, when did this all start? And of course, everybody assumes you try your whole life not to get pregnant. And then when you're ready to try, it's just going to happen. And that's just how I assumed my story was going to go. I met my now husband, obviously, when I was 18, and I was so young, and we were together forever until I was 26, 27, when we said, okay, let's have a baby. And we were ready. And that was, we were following, the path and the story of you get married and you have a baby. And so
did you guys meet in college, or
we met in college?
Okay.
Yep.
And you were together from 18 straight on through?
He was a little bit older, but yes, yeah,
Okay.
he graduated school and moved to LA to get into the entertainment world. And I followed him a few years later and wanted to get into entertainment as well. And that's what I did. So we started trying, and it was just in the beginning, it was one of those things where it wasn't working the first few months. And I do remember we went on our first trip to Europe, and I was like, oh, we're going to get pregnant in Europe, and that's going to be so cool. And that's our story. And then it didn't happen. And then it continued to not happen. So I went just to my regular OB and said, hey, we've been trying for a few months. What's going on? And he said, oh, I think you have what's called PCOS. So you don't ovulate regularly. I'm like, what the hell is PCOS? I've never heard of this before. So the first thing, of course, they did, let's put you on Clomid. So they put me on Clomid, and I think about a month later, I got pregnant. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, wonderful. And then I went in for the heartbeat check, and everything looked great. I was 6 weeks and perfect. And then I went in again at 8 weeks, and there was no heartbeat. And I was like, what in the world? Like, why? And, your first miscarriage, it's like, okay, it was really hard for me to swallow, but it was like, okay, just try again. And the doctor's like, you're so young, you're only 28, this happens. Don't worry about it. So then, of course, needed to get back on Clomid because wasn't getting pregnant. But this time the Clomid wasn't working for some reason. So, we waited about a year and nothing was working to get pregnant again. So the doctor said, I think you should go meet with a fertility doctor. So met with a fertility doctor and did IVF. And the one thing that I feel very fortunate about is I was an overproducer on getting eggs. So I always had so many eggs, but I always overstimulated. So I would get super sick, and it was a big process. But ended up getting pregnant again with IVF.
On your first round?
On our first round.
Wow. So did you skip IUIs entirely? Went straight to IVF?
No, I did IUIs.
Okay.
I probably did. And again, this is it's all, you do try to forget all of this.
Totally. I blocked my whole thing out. And I feel like every time I tell the story, it's slightly different. And I'm like, I'm not lying. I just don't really remember.
I know. That's the thing. And I could have, wrote it verbatim, when I was going through it, which I kind of should have. But, so yes, I did think I want to say like maybe 3 or 4 IUIs, but those never worked. But of course, it is the thing that a lot of doctors suggest first because it is so much cheaper than going straight to IVF. But after about 3 or 4 of those didn't work. We did IVF, and we always had to, and it worked on the first try, which was great. And then went in, saw the heartbeat at 6 weeks. And then at about 8 or 9 weeks, once again, I miscarried. And I remember each miscarriage and what happened, because of course, it's the shock of it, and oh my God, I'm bleeding, I'm miscarrying. And I remember, I was at work when it happened, and thank God my company at the time was so supportive. My coworkers were so supportive, and they knew what I was going through. But it sucked. And it was a really dark period. And you think, okay, the first one, like, okay, that sucks. And then the second one is the second one was really hard for me and my husband and my whole family. It wasn't just us. It was everybody who was going through it. And then of course, after the first, and then you're so anxious and you're like, okay, just be calm, because if you freak out, then you're going to miscarry because you're getting too worked up and you're not relaxed and all of, that crap that you hear. It's totally mentally debilitating, and it's really hard. And so that one was really was hard. And so we did that time, again, they're like, you're so young, this shouldn't be happening. So they did all the tissue sampling just to make sure it wasn't a chromosomal thing or what was going on. And of course, everything showed it was totally normal.
Wow.
So then at this point, the doctor's like, okay, just keep trying. I'm like, well, how many miscarriages do I have to go through? Like this, something doesn't seem right. So they said, just try again. So I went in, we did another, I can't remember actually if we used frozen or if we did a whole fresh IVF, because at the time, everyone always said fresh is best. So, and again, this is a number of years ago, so the philosophy was definitely a little bit different. So we did another round, of course, got pregnant on the first try. And this one, I remember going in for the heartbeat, they saw it. And then again, I started bleeding, a week later. It was literally all the exact same timing every single time. So started bleeding, went in, and the doctor at the time was just like, I think I might see a heartbeat, but I'm not sure. Go walk around a little bit and let's see, what happens. And it was just, I'm surprised I didn't have a mental breakdown at that point. And thank God my husband was just, he was awesome and so supportive and just like, honey, don't worry. So anyways, we suffered our third miscarriage. And that one, I was just pissed. I was so angry. I was pissed at myself because I thought I was doing something wrong. Yeah. I was angry. So that one, I wasn't even sad. I was just angry and I wanted to give up. And I just, I laid in bed and was trying to focus on other things. And I have a pretty positive personality and I was trying not to let it get to me. But of course, everybody around me, I was at the age where all my friends were getting pregnant by, looking at their husbands. And, and I was that one who, freaked all my friends out to start early, and they did, and they were having their babies. And, at this point, 3 years had gone by since we had started. So I was in my early 30s. And actually, I remember I had my third miscarriage a few weeks before I was turning 30, and my husband had, we were planning something. I said, you need to cancel everything. Like, I cannot see anybody. I don't want to be with anybody. And I'm going to start crying because I just remember him. It was really sweet. And he surprised me with a surprise party for my 30th. And I was so pissed at him, but I was so happy that all my friends were there.
Oh,
so it was really special. And anyway, so moving on.
Sorry.
So then, it's fine. So then we, you're at that point where, okay, what do you do? Do you keep trying? And I remember the doctor basically saying, like, you're so young, you can keep trying. And I was like, well, I'm not sure mentally how much more I can take of all this. So then my mom at the time was like, we're going to switch doctors and let's just start fresh. And I said, okay. And like, even my clients today, a lot of them, they go through years of this and then they finally, whether they switch doctors or whatever it is, sometimes a fresh look on things is what you need. So I ended up switching doctors. And she was like, oh, have they ever done, she went through all my history and she's like, have they ever done an MRI on you to look at your uterus? Because there's some notes in your history that said you might have a bicoordinated uterus. And at this point, I think I also had like 1 or 2 surgeries to remove crap in my uterus. And they never really said anything about my uterus, but I never had an MRI. So long story short, did an MRI and she's like, you have a severe bicoordinated uterus, which means basically my uterus was, sometimes you can have a little septum and, some people have a bicoordinated uterus and go on and have full term babies. And sometimes you can have such a severe bicoordinated uterus that is basically it's your uterus is broken in half.
It kind of looks like a horn, right?
It's a horn. Exactly.
I'm not going to lie. I just Googled it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And so the severity can be very minimal or it can be extremely severe. So the doctor's like, you have an extremely severe bicoordinated uterus. And every time you get pregnant, the baby or the fetus, it's attaching to an area where there's no blood supply. So that is why every time you see the heartbeat and then at 8 or 9 weeks, you miscarry because there's no blood supply that's getting to the baby. And at this point, it was like, she was basically like, you can get a surrogate or you can keep trying and you could be on bed rest. You could keep losing the babies. We don't know. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. What is a surrogate? I don't even know what that is. And I remember I was actually walking on the street on Little Santa Monica Boulevard. I totally remember where I was when she called me and told me this news. And I called my mom immediately, and I was like, so the doctor just called, and she says, I have this, and my best chance of ever having a child is to get a surrogate. And I was like, I don't even know what that is, but I can't do it because that's giving up. And I'm not a person who gives up on things. And I said, I'll just keep trying. It's not a big deal.
Interesting.
And my mom was like, no, you're getting a surrogate. And I was like, I think it costs too much. I don't even know. And again, this was over 10 years ago where surrogacy, you read about it in a magazine with a famous person doing it,
right?
But not a normal person walking down Little Santa Monica Boulevard doing it. Like your commoner, it wasn't something that was done. And and I didn't want to, I wanted to be able to carry my baby. Like I wasn't there yet. And so I went home and I told my husband, and I was like, so she said surrogacy. I don't even know what this is, but my mom is like, we should do it. And he was like, well, let's just do it. And I was like, but that's giving up. And he was like, Nick, he's like, I personally can't see you go through anymore. And I was like, but I've only had 3 miscarriages, and everybody else, like some people go through 10. And he's like, I don't care. Like you clearly no, if we have the opportunity to do this, let's just explore it and see. So that was our story. And so that's what led us to surrogacy.
Yes. And I want to talk about your mom a little bit too. Your mom, Pamela, who founded Baby Quest, which we can talk about more after you're finished with your story too.
Yeah, Baby Quest was started after my mom obviously saw that we needed a surrogate and financially couldn't afford it. And we were so thankful that our families helped us through that, or else we truly would not have our children because the costs are so high. So Baby Quest gives grants out to those who are struggling with infertility treatments who financially can't afford it.
And one thing I love about Baby Quest is that it's very inclusive. You guys, they accept applications from heterosexual, same-sex couples, singles. I think that is so awesome.
Absolutely. And when she had mentioned this, it was one of those things I'm like, there has to be an organization out there that's inclusive of everybody. And my mom was like, no, there is not. And that's just insane. So
wild.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So it is an amazing organization, and what they've done over the years and how many babies.
How many babies are there?
The world. I want to say it's in the 80s now.
Wow.
88, something
That's
like
so
that.
Cool. So tell me about the surrogacy process for you guys. You said you didn't know much about it. Where did you even begin?
Yeah. So I started to do research and just started to look into what is this? And it was an amazing, and as I mentioned in the beginning for us, and going through all of this, everyone's like, oh, you'll just adopt, or, oh, you'll just do this. And that's a really hard thing for somebody to hear who's going through infertility is, oh, you'll just adopt. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's beautiful. And it was just something that's really challenging to accept okay, you're not going to be able to carry your baby. And adoption, there's no guarantee. And so to go through even more heartbreak, and the adoption process is not quick either. So we decided to explore surrogacy first. And that was something where for us, we were able to get the embryos. It was just a matter of finding somebody who would carry for us. So we just started to put feelers out there of, did we know anybody who used an agency? Because it's scary, and there's so much information out there and misinformation out there, and you're putting so much trust into this, to a company to help you through something you want so badly. And it is so expensive. So I had it was like a friend of a friend of a friend who had gone through it. So I reached out to her and just started asking her 10,000 questions about the process. And then found an agency who they found me. And at the time, again, I was not working in the surrogacy world. I was working in entertainment. So I found a wonderful agency who helped us. And my first surrogate, she lived in the Bay Area. And I still remember my husband and I, sitting at the computer signing our contract. I'm like, we're signing our life away. And are we really doing this? And I'm like, I could still keep trying. And he's like, no, you are not trying anymore. Just, and we went through our emotions of acceptance. Like,
sure.
I was like, how am I never going to be able to feel this baby kick? Like that was really sad for me, but I went through those emotions. So by the time we signed our contract and we were full speed in this with the surrogacy, I never had any doubts. I never questioned it once I started it because you can't, like, you never want to look back and say, oh, I should have done this. Like, everybody's journey to get to surrogacy is different. Some need to go through 10 miscarriages. Some need to go through one. Like, there's no right or wrong answer. Like, when is the time I should turn to surrogacy? Because everybody's journey to get there emotionally and physically is going to be different.
Absolutely.
For me, I knew I didn't have it in me anymore, and I just wanted a child. I don't care, if it was my biology, if I carried it, whatever. I just knew I wanted to raise a child. So I was at the point where, okay, I am there. But again, everybody is different.
Right.
So we had just accepted it. And I do feel that you have to be ready emotionally, whether you need to talk to a therapist or friends or whatever to get to that point.
Yeah.
But we were fully in, and it was for us, it was a beautiful experience. It still had its bumps. And
can I back up a little bit? Sorry to interrupt, but just a couple questions. So you just did another round of IVF and getting the embryos? Can you, how many did you have?
So I had frozen embryos at the time, but supposedly, again, they were like, you're going through surrogacy, let's do fresh. So we had done another fresh cycle, and I had gotten like 30 eggs because I was such an overproducer with my eggs. So that was never an issue. And they ended up back in the day, it was put 2 embryos in. So they ended up putting 2 embryos in the surrogate.
And also, I want to know, how did you choose the particular surrogate?
Yes.
What was the process?
Absolutely. It's so, and being in it now, and I do this on a daily basis and screen surrogates and know what to look for.
Yeah.
Back then, when I was, so new to everything, it was kind of scary, but we went with the first surrogate that we looked at, honestly. And which is like amazing to look back and be like, yep, she looks good. Let's do this.
And what kind of information was available about her? And also, follow up to that is, did they have to choose you as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's like a mutual decision.
Yep. And it's a 2-way street. So surrogates will put together profiles, it's a 12-page profile on themselves, which gives history on their pregnancy, their background, where they grew up, their interests. And when it comes to a surrogate, genetics, it doesn't matter, obviously, because we're not using their genes. So it's really, the most important factor was her support system and her medical history.
What do you mean by support system?
Like, you want a surrogate, you want to make sure that they have, if they're on bed rest, like, who's going to help them with their kids, who supports them,
who's their village,
there for them. Exactly. And that's, when it comes to surrogacy, that's really the most important factors are medical history and support system.
Gotcha.
Some will say, well, why does she want to do this? And what type of person wants to be a surrogate? So, I mean, there's, and a lot of people who are looking at surrogates, everyone's looking at different things. For me, my husband and I, we just wanted somebody who was healthy. We really didn't care about location, but we just, you want to read their profile and have a good feeling about them. And when we read her profile, we were like, yes, she sounds great. And we met her, and it's so fascinating because my husband and I we dived in right away, and we became really close with her even before she was pregnant. pregnant. And now being in this world, clients will be like, well, what type of relationship should I have in the beginning? And it's one of those that really does form organically. Some, like me, jump in right away, and some are more reserved and wait till she's pregnant or 20 weeks pregnant because they don't want to get hurt. And being on the professional side, I do recommend that. But on the personal side, it's really hard not to jump in because this person's going to be carrying your child. So it's a very delicate road, and one, again, there's no right or wrong, and it's such a personal journey.
So for jumping in for you, did that mean meeting her in person? I know you're in LA and she's in the Bay Area. So did you guys get together, or?
We did. Yeah.
Okay.
We actually met the day of her medical evaluation, and I went with her to the appointment, and I was physically, there. And what was sort of, as an intended parent, not having to go through, the evaluation and the probing and the prodding and the needles and the this and that, you're sort of sitting there like, okay, this is a really weird experience. And you sort of, as a woman, like, I took on the role of like a partner, because you're physically, so you got to experience this in a whole different way, where my husband was definitely very removed from the process because it was just a different experience. It wasn't his wife going through this. It was sort of, the surrogate. So it was just definitely, you feel very removed from it, from, in a big way. But she was lovely and wonderful, and she knew how anxious I was, and she really she was great and very nurturing to us, and making sure that Josh and I felt very comfortable with everything. And she knew how scared we were, as every intended parent is, during that phase of everything. It's all new territory. So it was very emotional, but she was great. And she ended up, she has to go through all of her medical screening and legal and all of that process to even get to a transfer. So it's a number of months to get to that point. So, and we had waited so long at this point. So of course we're anxious and nervous, and she ended up, I still remember, the transfer day, and we have so many photos and everything. And she ended up transferring 2 embryos because at that point we wanted babies. So we're like, let's have twins. We don't care. We want as many babies as possible, not thinking about the risk of carrying twins. But at the time, it's just, you just want babies and you don't think about that stuff.
So had she been a surrogate before, or were you guys her first time, or?
Yep. So she had been a surrogate before. So she was what was called an experienced surrogate.
Okay.
And she had, at the time, she had 2 of her own. And then she had 1 surrogacy baby.
Okay.
So she had 3 pregnancies at that point. So we were her 4th.
Okay.
And, and this is a whole different area of discussion, but some will say, oh, if you're looking into this, do you do, an experienced surrogate versus a first-time surrogate? And for us, it just happened to be that our first was experienced, but our second journey, we used a first-time surrogate.
Okay.
And we always say there's pros and cons to both. But again, it's sort of a whole different conversation. But yeah, so our first, we used an experienced. And again, for us, it was all new territory. So it did, definitely add a little extra layer of comfort in there. She ended up getting pregnant, and we ended up driving up for the first ultrasound, which was at 6 weeks. And that ultrasound was with her own doctor. And we go in there and they do the ultrasound, and he sees, 1 heartbeat. And then he was like, oh, there's 2 heartbeats. And we were like, wait, so both embryos took? And he was like, no, you have identical, she's carrying identical twins, because there's only 1. And this might have actually, to be honest, I think maybe we had 1 ultrasound, they saw 1 heartbeat. And maybe this was at 8 or 9 weeks that we went back. I think that's what was it. We went back, and that's when they saw 2 heartbeats.
Whoa.
And that's when they realized so it had split. In the 1 embryo had split, which is, I want to say it's like less than 1%. In IVF, it does happen, but it's very rare that it happens.
Wow.
So it split. We were carrying identical, and we were just, of course, it was like, oh my God, can we handle twins? And the excitement that comes with that. But knowing, with identical twins, there's so many risks, and it turns out they, were sharing all the, it was. They were sharing the placenta, and they were in one sac, and there was so many concerns. So, long story short, at around 14 or 15 weeks, we went back, and it turns out that we lost one of the twins. So for us, and our surrogate was devastated. And I just remember, she was just crying, and it was so emotional for her. And for Josh and I, it was like, we have to focus. We have one healthy pregnancy now. Like, we don't have to worry so much about, the twins and all of that. And for the surrogate, she had never suffered anything like that. So it was definitely, that was our big bump in our journey. And it was scary. It was just part of the, it was part of the path. And, and, in the end, it led to the healthiest pregnancy, and everything was so easy and smooth after that for the most part. And we have our beautiful girl who's going to be 10 in January. And it was a blessing. And I remember going through, the emotions in the beginning of the pregnancy. I was definitely more emotional. Like, she and our surrogate was she would communicate with us all the time and send us, videos of of her seeing the baby kick. And the first few times, that was definitely very challenging for me. And me telling my husband, like, that's supposed to be me, and I'm supposed to be feeling that. And him just saying, but just know, like, that's our baby girl, and she's going to be here so soon. And just reminding me what was important. Like, was it feeling the baby kick, or was it having a baby in the end? So I just had to keep reminding myself of that, which I did. And after those first few months, it was, I don't think we embraced it, like realized we were having a baby till she was probably about 25 weeks, because I was still freaked out. And every appointment I would go in and be like, oh, something's going to be wrong. Like, and that's, everyone who goes through this.
Absolutely. It's like always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Always.
Yep.
So the pregnancy, the rest of it was fine. And you had your healthy baby girl. Tell me about when she was born. What was that? Were you able to be in the room?
As an agency owner now, like, we talk about that, like, who's going to be in the room, and if the hospital.
Can you guys decide that, or does the hospital have to decide, or how
normally, for a vaginal delivery, they allow at least 2 to 3 people in there. When it comes to C-sections, that's a little bit different. And of course, we always want the surrogate to have a support person there, whether it's their husband, partner, a mom in there, to be there with them. And then, of course, if they are only limited to 2 people, then, one of the intended parents would be in the room. For us, it was a vaginal. And so both my husband and I were able to be in the room, and it was a really special day. And I remember everything so clearly. And I was so anxious and so nervous. And I remember my surrogate at the time, a few weeks before the birth, she had asked if she, you go through this whole birth plan, and who's going to hold the baby first, and who's going to cut the cord, all of that. So she had asked if it was okay if the doctor could hand her the baby first, and she could give me the baby, because she wanted to make it full circle for her and be the one to hand me the baby.
I love that.
Which was really special. And at the time, I didn't think about it. It was like, oh, absolutely. Like, totally. And so the day came, and we, checked into the hospital in the morning, and she was induced because she was 40 weeks and hadn't gone into labor yet. So she was induced. So it was a very calm day, and we waited all day, and finally around 5, like, the water broke, and then everything was great. And so the doctor was delivering the baby, and she was perfect, and he goes to hand me the baby, and I was like, oh, hold on, you have to give it to her first, and she wants to hand it to me. And it was really hard for me to do that, but I wanted to respect her wishes. Like, she had done so much for us, and I wanted to give her that as well. So the doctor then handed her the baby, and there's actually a video of me, like, it felt like it was 5 hours of her holding her, and it was all of about 5 seconds. But there's
You're
me
like, give me the
standing
baby.
there, oh, like, just give me her. And then finally she did. And it was, it was perfect, and it was surreal and beautiful. And going through surrogacy, the process, it definitely does not feel real until you hold the baby, no matter what anybody says, because you're not experiencing anything really. And the whole process, just, you feel very removed from it all until that moment. And we had waited so long, and it was perfect. It was really perfect. And
wow.
And I love being able to share the story with now both my daughters are getting older, and I am able to share these stories with them,
right?
How they came into this world. And for them, in the beginning it was like, well, why couldn't you carry us? I don't understand. And who carried us? And that's so weird. And now it's like, for them, their stories are no big deal, because it's not a big deal.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? I am such a lucky mom, because I got to watch you come out. I got to see everything. And I was so present and in the moment. And same with my husband. Like, and most moms, when they deliver, they don't get that, because you're in pain and you're going through all of that. And I was like, no, I was there. Like, so it's really, so that's
cool.
my special thing.
Right.
And
can you tell me about the second time with your second daughter?
So, second time, obviously much easier. At this point, I was, and I say much easier, but it wasn't emotionally. So we decided, like, after my daughter, she was almost, 1 or 2, and my husband's like, are we going to think about a second? I was like, you know what? I was thinking that I think I'm going to try having my second. He looked at me, he was like, you realize that you went through a lot, and most likely that's not going to happen. I was like, well, maybe we should just try. So I went to the doctor, then the same doctor, and I said, and at this time I was working for an agency. So anyway, so when my oldest was about, 6, 7 months old, I would go home crying every night, saying I was so miserable, working, and I didn't go through all of this to not be able to be with her and to be doing something that I wasn't passionate about. Like, my bosses, they were so wonderful with me and so patient with everything I went through. And they were really there with me through the years, but I wasn't feeling it anymore. And I had told my husband, I was like, I think I went through this experience to be able to pay it forward to others. Like, I wanted to be there and to offer something to people going through this. And I wanted to be involved. So when my daughter was about 6 or 7 months old, I just started looking at agencies. I'm like, I think I want to work for an agency. And he was like, you're going to leave entertainment? I'm like, you know what? Like, yeah, like I'm okay with that. And I want to find something where I can be with her, but also be doing something that I'm passionate about and that I want to do.
So great.
So I started making cold calls to agencies and just, put my resume out there, and a bunch of doctors who owned a surrogacy agency, it was sort of their in-house agency, ended up hiring me. And I got to work from home, which was amazing. So I got to be with my daughter, but work at the same time.
Yes.
And got to get the business side of it. I had the personal side. I had the emotional side. And it was so amazing being able to be on the other side. And I saw things that I never saw as an intended parent not working for an agency. I saw how much an agency does and how valuable and important they are. And as an intended parent, sometimes you don't see that because you are so focused on just having the baby and it, just all the emotions that are going through it. So I just saw things from a whole different perspective. So I was working at the agency when we decided to have our second. So it definitely was a different experience for us. Once again, though, I went with the first surrogate profile I saw, and she was a first-time surrogate. I remember, meeting her for the first time, and it felt right once again. But I was, again, you were scared, and I once again felt like I was giving up, not trying on myself again. And the doctor was like, "No, I don't recommend it. It's not safe."
It's interesting that you had that same wave of emotions the second time
absolutely.
too, right?
Yep. Because as a, you feel, I don't know. It's just, I think at the time I was reading stories, and I was also working in the industry. So I would see how much women were going through. I was like, well, maybe I didn't go through enough. Like, should we just, you feel, I don't know what the word is, but I just, I went through that, and my husband was like, no, I don't want to see us go through that again. So we got the surrogate, and it was, again, the testing, all the tests that the surrogate has to go through, it takes a number of months, and it's a very, hurry up and wait process. But we had a wonderful journey the second time, and we were very blessed and fortunate that with both the first time took, our second journey, we only transferred one embryo, and one embryo took, and I was definitely calmer the second time.
Right. And sorry, did you do another round so you could have a fresh transfer? Or did you use the frozen? Okay.
No, we did. Yeah, because again, it was just the thing that you did. And that was expensive. And thank goodness, for parents who helped us once again go through this.
Yeah. Can I ask you to, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but can you give a ballpark? Like, how much is it?
So when we did it the first time, which was, 10 years ago now, you were looking at about $85,000.
Okay.
To do it today is about $150,000.
Okay. So does the 85 or today's 150, does that include care for like the surrogate? Is that like a flat fee, or like, can you break it down a little bit, owning the agency? Like, how do you guys figure all the like logistics out?
Yep. So the 150, that includes, so most surrogates' base fees can range anywhere from 35,000 to 50, 60,000 plus, depending on her experience. So if she's done a surrogacy before, her base fee is going to be higher.
Is it more every time?
It is more every time. And it also depends on her location. If she's in California, it's going to be more expensive because a lot of, the laws in California are obviously very surrogacy friendly, but also a lot of people who fly here from out of the country, their doctors are in Los Angeles. So for them, they feel the convenience of having a surrogate in California is easier, even though there are so many surrogacy friendly states, Colorado, Oregon, Texas, it goes on and on, but a lot of people just focus on California.
I think in New York, it's not legal here. Is that correct?
It is not legal.
That blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the clinics there, they'll have to either recommend that their patients, use a clinic outside of New York, or they transfer the embryos out to make sure the transfer does not happen in the state of New York. But hopefully one day that will change. But
it seems so like archaic that it's not legal everywhere. And I know obviously I'm progressive and all that stuff and a feminist, but doesn't that seem wild?
To be honest, this is a medical condition. It's not one I chose. It's not one that I could change. And same with IVF. Like, why? I mean, that's a whole different topic, but why some insurance companies don't cover it, or even surrogacy, again, whether you're, a same-sex couple who has no choice but to do it, or if you're a female that just medically has issues, it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. So,
and I think, isn't it true also that surrogacy, and again, we could do a whole episode on just this, but it's banned in like other countries too, like, like France and so you've got a lot of people coming internationally.
About 50%.
Like you said. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it is unfortunate, and we feel very blessed to live in a state where they make it so easy. Thank goodness. It's just expensive. So if you have the money and the means, you can do it, and some don't, and so the resources are more limited. And obviously, that's why BabyQuest was started too, to hopefully help couples in that situation.
Right. So when did you go from having the 2 kids to then deciding to start your own agency?
So about when my youngest, about 2 weeks before she was born, the agency I was working for decided, and they were really busy doctors and they just didn't have time to continue the in-house agency. So I was like, with my partner now, I was like, you know what, I always wanted to have my own agency. What if we just started our own? So in 2013, about 2 weeks before my second was born, we started Abundant Beginnings, and it has been nonstop ever since. And that's my baby, and it's been such a blessing to be able to do something that I feel so passionate about, and to educate people on the process, whether they use my agency or not. I just want people to have the right information too when it comes to this, and to be able to have the opportunity to do this, because there's so much trust. I said this in the beginning, there's so much trust, and we as an agency run ourselves as ethically and as honestly as we can, and that is so important to us. And we want our clients to feel like their hands are being held, and that we're there for them. And the hard part about surrogacy too is that you think, oh, okay, I'm going to get a surrogate, I'm going to get an egg donor, like this is going to work. It's going to work on the first try. It's going to be easy. We're not going to have a miscarriage. And that's not the case. Like I have seen it all still through surrogacy. I have seen stillborns. I have had miscarriages. I have had really just bad days with clients going through this, because this process is still not a guarantee. At the same time, 99% of it turns out to be beautiful. And we have, since 2013, we've welcomed almost 90 babies. And it's such a blessing to be able to help people go through this process, and be there for them, and work with our surrogates. Like sometimes, intended parents, come into this, and we just have to feel so blessed that there are these women who want to do this for us as well.
Can you tell me a little about the screening process of the surrogates?
Yeah, absolutely. They go through a really rigorous screening process as far as medical, psychological background, home visits, reference checks. It's weeks and weeks of screening them before they're presented to intended parents who are looking.
And how many do you guys have at any given time? Is it kind of like a rotating?
It's a rotating, I mean, matching surrogates happens very quickly. So, our agency personally can have anywhere from 5 to 15 at a time ready to go. So, and every agency runs things differently, their matching process and how they work. So, but for the most part, screening surrogates is very similar agency to agency. And we're very lucky that there's women out there who want to do this. And and everyone will say, well, why does she want to be a surrogate? Why does she want to be pregnant? It must be because for the money, which is, this process is way too long, too time consuming, too emotional, hard on their body to just be about the money. We always say that money absolutely helps, whether they're using it to pay off debt, to buy them a house, to save for college, to, for their kids' college, whatever it is. I personally don't care if they need the money, great. Like they are doing me a service. So I'm happy to pay them. Like they're giving me a child. Like I that doesn't bother me whatsoever. So
it's so wonderful. And it just reminded me of a past episode where I interviewed this wonderful woman, Christy, who is a surrogate, and she had used one herself later, which was really interesting. But she was telling me, and I just pulled up her quote because I thought it was so powerful. And, she was talking about people say like, how did you give away the babies, after you had them? And she said, I never looked at it like that. They weren't ever my babies to give away. I gave them back to where they belonged.
Well,
I just made myself cry. Like, I thought that was so cool and so special. And my God, what a gift.
These women, they don't, we've never had anybody who, if they want a child, they want their own. They don't want a stranger's child. So again, their mentality through this is just, I'm babysitting. I'm babysitting this child until I can give it to their moms and dads.
Yeah.
And I remember my second surrogate, we went to her house after my Talia was born, and she was holding her, and for surrogates, it's really important that they have closure with the process. So we want them to hold the baby and to have their kids meet the baby and have that. It's really healthy and important for them to have that. So we were standing there, and she looked at me straight in the eye, and mind you, she had never done this before. She's like, "Can I tell you something?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." She goes, I'm going to cry now too. She goes, "I feel so good right now. And is that normal?" She's like, "I thought I should feel sad." And I was like, "No, like, I'm so happy to hear that." She's like, I'm so happy to see you with your baby finally. And that makes me not sad at all. And that's why surrogates do this over and over again, is because they want that feeling. It's a blessing and it's a gift. So for people who aren't educated on surrogacy and they say, "Oh, they're going to want to keep it," like they haven't been through our shoes.
Hey again, guys. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Nicole. If you'd like some more information about Abundant Beginnings, you can go to abcsurrogacy.com. And if you want some more info about BabyQuest, you can apply for a grant or donate at babyquestfoundation.org. So I love these strong, fierce women who are doing important things, and I appreciate both Nicole and Pamela and all of you for listening. So thanks again. Talk to you next time.